Three 3-year-old children had never taken a single step. They had never uttered a word. Three identical little angels gazed at the world as if trapped behind an invisible pane of glass. Their father was one of the wealthiest men in Chicago. He had more money than he could spend, the top doctors in the country, the most cutting-edge therapies, state-of-the-art tech, specialists who charged a fortune per hour, and none of it worked. The boys remained silent, motionless, absent, until she arrived. A woman with no college degree, earning no more than $1,000 a month, scrubbing floors and washing laundry. A woman the elite society overlooked like she was part of the furniture. But this woman was about to do something no doctor had managed in 3 years, something science couldn't explain, something that would change everything. If this story has already touched your heart in the first minute, subscribe to the channel. Here you'll find tales that heal, inspire, and make you believe in human kindness again. What was about to happen was proof that where money fell short, there was something more powerful. Something you couldn't buy, something no university could teach. This is the story of 3 lost children who found the one person who truly saw them. The Dawson estate rose in the most exclusive neighborhood of Chicago like a marble and crystal palace. 3 stories of sleek modern architecture, gardens that could have graced the pages of an upscale magazine, fountains whose water sang day and night, an infinity pool reflecting the city skyline. But inside, on the 2nd floor, there were 3 connected rooms where the heaviest silence in the world hung. Julian Dawson was 39, with custom-tailored Italian suits, watches worth more than a condo, businesses spanning 4 continents, investments that shifted millions weekly. A man who'd built an empire from nothing, with ruthless intelligence and boundless ambition. But now, standing before the windows of his private office with a glass of bourbon he didn't bring to his lips, he was just a broken man. His 3 sons sat in the playroom, in the exact spots where they'd been left that morning. Noah, Theo, and Lucas, just 3 years old. Identical triplets with honey-colored eyes and light brown hair, beautiful as porcelain dolls and mute as statues. They didn't walk, didn't talk. They barely reacted when someone entered the room. They sat on their padded little chairs, staring into space, occasionally moving their hands in meaningless gestures. Sometimes one of them would cry without tears, a dry, distant wail that chilled the blood. Julian had poured a fortune into figuring it out. Neurologists from New York, London, Zurich, behavioral therapists, child development experts, MRIs, genetic analyses, entire teams dedicated solely to his sons. The diagnosis was always the same: severe developmental delay, cause unknown, no brain lesions, no identifiable syndrome. The boys simply weren't progressing, as if something inside them had been switched off. They'd been born premature 6 weeks early. Their mother, Emily, had died 3 days after delivery from complications no doctor could have foreseen. Massive hemorrhage, organ failure, a swift, brutal death that left Julian holding 3 fragile newborns and an unbearable void. Since then, he'd tried to be both father and mother, but work consumed him. Responsibilities pulled him away. And every time he came home and saw his sons like this, something in his chest hardened a little more. The love was there, deep and painful. But so was the helplessness, the quiet rage, the guilt that gnawed at him every night. Was it his absence? The lack of a mother? Something he'd done wrong? No one had answers. The house was full of staff, a chef, a driver, gardeners, 2 specialized nannies working rotations, and the housekeeper, Mrs. Hargrove, a stern-faced 60-year-old with impeccable manners who ran the estate with military efficiency. But none of them could connect with the boys. The nannies fed them, changed them, set them in front of expensive educational toys they never touched. They did their jobs with distant professionalism, sticking to schedules, filing reports, and the boys stayed the same. That morning, Mrs. Hargrove entered the office without knocking. "Mr. Dawson, the new hire is here." Julian didn't turn around. "What new hire?" "The young woman for cleaning and laundry. You approved her last week." Julian barely remembered. He'd signed so many papers, authorized so many things. "Have her start then. There's something you should know." Mrs. Hargrove's voice held barely concealed disapproval. "She's very young, 28, no experience in a home like this. She's from a small town. Her last reference is from a nursing home in Springfield. And I just want to make sure she knows her place. This isn't an ordinary house. There are rules, protocols. Julian finally turned. He looked at the housekeeper with tired eyes. Hargrove, I don't care where she's from. If she does her job well, she stays. If not, she goes. I don't have the energy for this. The woman nodded stiffly and left. Julian turned back to the window. Down in the garden, a young woman crossed the stone path toward the service entrance. She carried a small suitcase and a worn backpack, dark hair tied in a simple ponytail, plain but clean clothes without a single brand logo. She walked slowly, taking in the trees, the flowers, as if she'd never seen a garden like this. There was something in her movements, something soft, something that didn't fit the brutal pace of this world. Julian looked away. She was just another employee, one more name on the list. He had no idea this woman would shatter everything he thought he knew about his sons. He had no idea the golden silence of his estate was about to break. But there was something no one knew about Naomi Reynolds, not even her fully, a gift that didn't come from books or degrees, one that would change 3 lives forever. Naomi Reynolds expected nothing extraordinary from this job. She just needed the money, a steady paycheck, a room to sleep in, something to send back to her mom in rural Georgia, who lived alone on a meager pension and crippling hand arthritis. She'd worked in homes before, middle-class families who wanted everything spotless but barely noticed her, elderly folks in assisted living who told her the same stories every day. Naomi knew how to clean, cook, care for people. She knew how to be invisible when needed. But she also knew how to truly see, not just look. It was something her grandmother had taught her as a child in that forgotten mountain town. Her grandmother, a wrinkled little woman who knew herbs, old folk songs, how to touch people so they'd feel less alone. "Naomi, my girl," she'd say, braiding her hair. "People don't need perfect words. They need someone to see them, to feel them. That's what heals. Not medicine, not prayers, but being seen." Naomi was 28, but she held her words like treasures. Mrs. Hargrove met her at the service entrance with a printed list and a steely gaze. "Here are your duties. Laundry on Mondays and Thursdays. Clean the guest rooms, library, gym, and downstairs bathrooms. Don't go to the 2nd floor without permission. Don't touch anything in Mr. Dawson's office, and don't speak to the children, understood?" Naomi blinked. "Don't speak to the children? The boys have specialized nannies. You have nothing to do with them. They're delicate." The way she said it, like the children were fragile objects, like talking to them might break something. Naomi said nothing. She just nodded. But inside, something in her stirred. The first 2 days were pure routine. Washing, ironing, scrubbing, marble floors so shiny they reflected the ceiling, folding plush towels, polishing gold faucets. The house was a cold museum, perfect, soulless. Naomi slept in a small room off the laundry, a bed, a dresser, a window overlooking the back garden. It was more than she'd had in years. She should have been grateful. But something about this place pressed on her chest. On the 3rd day, while mopping the downstairs hallway, she heard a sound, crying. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was a muffled sob, like someone who'd stopped expecting anyone to come. Naomi set down the mop. She glanced around. Mrs. Hargrove was in the kitchen. The nannies were on break. Mr. Dawson had left early. She climbed the stairs slowly. The cries came from the 2nd floor. The playroom door was ajar. Naomi peeked in and saw them, 3 little boys on low chairs, backs hunched, heads bowed. One cried without moving, hands in his lap. The other 2 stared at the floor, still as stones. The room was full of toys, colorful, perfectly shelved. But the boys didn't touch them, didn't look at them. It was as if they didn't exist. Naomi felt her throat tighten. She pushed the door open a bit more and stepped in. "Hello, little ones." Her voice was soft. She didn't expect a reply. The boys didn't react. Naomi knelt at a distance, not wanting to scare them. She looked at each one in turn. 3 identical faces, 3 pairs of honey eyes that looked but didn't see. "What's your name?" Silence. The crying one let out a trembling sigh. Naomi extended her hand slowly, palm up, not touching, just offering. "It's okay. Nothing's wrong." And then something happened. The crying boy moved his fingers, just a millimeter. but it was a movement, a response. Naomi held her breath. She stayed silent for minutes, just breathing, just being there, not pushing. Then, without overthinking, she began to hum. An old melody, a tune her grandmother sang when she couldn't sleep. No words, just soft, repetitive notes like wind through trees. The crying boy stopped. The other two lifted their heads, just a little, but they did. A shiver ran down Naomi's spine. She didn't know what was happening, but something was. She kept humming, swaying gently like an invisible dance. One boy blinked several times. Another turned his head toward her. The third, the crier, exhaled deeply, like surfacing from drowning. Naomi smiled. Not a big one. A small, genuine curve. "Hello," she whispered again. "I see you. I see you all." And at that moment the door flew open. Mrs. Hargrove stormed in like a gale. "What are you doing here?" Naomi stood quickly, heart racing. "I heard crying." "I told you not to come to the second floor. I told you not to approach the children. But they were alone. They have nannies. They have professional care. You don't belong here. If you disobey again, you're gone. Understood?" Naomi lowered her eyes. "Understood." She left the room on shaking legs. But before closing the door, she glanced back. All three boys were looking at her, eyes wide with something almost like attention. Naomi stepped into the hall and took a deep breath. Something real had happened in there and she wasn't letting it go. But Mrs. Hargrove wasn't just a strict housekeeper. She had her own reasons for keeping Naomi away. Reasons tied to control, power, and the fear that someone might uncover what she'd hidden for years. Naomi quickly learned how the house worked. There were unwritten rules, invisible hierarchies, lines you didn't cross. Service staff ate in the kitchen after everyone else finished. They used the back entrance, made no noise, offered no opinions, didn't stare, and above all stayed away from the children. Mrs. Hargrove made it clear daily with glances, sharp comments, warnings disguised as advice. "Naomi, mops go in the right cabinet, not the left. Is it that hard to remember something so simple?" "Naomi, you ironed Mr. Dawson's sheets wrong. Do them over." "Naomi, don't walk the main hall when Mr. Dawson is home. Use the service stairs." Each correction was a constant little jab, meant to remind her of her place. The other staff, the chef and one nanny, were polite but distant. They didn't want trouble. They did their jobs, collected their paychecks, went home. No one wanted to cross Mrs. Hargrove. She'd worked here for 20 years, since before Mr. Dawson's marriage. She was the guardian of order, the protector of traditions, and everyone feared her. But Naomi couldn't stop thinking about the boys. Every time she passed the playroom, she slowed. She listened. Sometimes soft cries, sometimes just silence. Each time, that pull in her chest grew, the need to enter, to be near, to do something. One afternoon, folding laundry in the utility room, she overheard voices in the hall. Mrs. Hargrove talking to a nanny. "I don't know what to do with them anymore. They respond to nothing, not even the new toys Mr. Dawson brought. You think they'll ever improve?" "I don't know. The doctors give no hope. Mr. Dawson throws fortunes at therapies that do nothing. I think it's best to accept reality. These boys will never be normal." Naomi gripped the fabric tight. Anger burned in her stomach. Never be normal. As if they were broken things, as if they didn't deserve to be seen as people. That night, when everyone slept, Naomi crept to the second floor. She made no sound, turned on no lights. She just stood outside the playroom door, hand on the knob. She didn't enter, but she whispered, "Hello, little ones, it's me. I just wanted you to know someone sees you, someone knows you're there." No response. She didn't expect one. But somewhere in that dark room, 3 boys breathed, 3 hearts beat, 3 souls waited. And Naomi felt it. Days passed. Naomi stuck to her routine. Mrs. Hargrove kept watching. But Naomi started something small, something no one noticed. Whenever she cleaned near the playroom, she hummed softly, almost inaudibly, the same melody from that day over and over. She didn't know if the boys heard. She didn't know if it mattered. But she did it anyway. One morning, dusting the library, she found an old book on child development. She flipped through it. A chapter on sensory stimulation, music, touch, rhythmic movement, emotional connection. The words echoed in her mind. Children don't respond to cold or mechanical stimuli. They respond to warmth, genuine affection, constant presence. Naomi closed the book, heart pounding. That was it. That was what this house lacked. Warmth. Everything was perfect. Everything was professional. But there was no warmth. That afternoon, Mrs. Hargrove caught her humming while mopping the hall. "What are you doing?" Naomi stopped. "Just singing while I work, sorry. This isn't a marketplace, it's Mr. Dawson's home. Here we work in silence." "Understood?" But Naomi kept humming softer, where the housekeeper couldn't hear. And then came the day it all exploded. Naomi was cleaning the gym when she heard a yell, not pain but frustration. She ran toward it, the playroom. She burst in without thinking. One nanny stood with hands on her head, staring at the three boys. Noah had thrown his food plate on the floor. Puree everywhere, the boy wailed nonstop. The nanny was on the verge of breakdown. I can't anymore. 3 hours trying to get them to eat and they won't." Naomi knelt beside Noah. She didn't touch the mess or the boy. She just stayed at his level, breathing slow. "It's okay," she murmured. "It's okay." She started humming. The familiar tune. Noah stopped crying. His breathing steadied. His little hands stopped shaking. Naomi took a clean spoon, scooped some puree and offered it. She didn't force, just held it close. Noah opened his mouth. The nanny froze. "How?" But before Naomi could answer, the door opened. Julian Dawson entered. His eyes flicked from Naomi kneeling by his son to the mess to the panicked nanny. "What's going on here?" Naomi rose slowly. "I just helped." "Helped?" Julian's voice was ice. "Who gave you permission to be here?" "No one, sir." "But the boy was crying and You're not a nanny. You have no training. You have no business with my sons." The words landed like stones. Naomi looked down. "Sorry." Julian stared at her with gray, weary eyes full of anger or pain or both. "Get out, now." Naomi left, cheeks burning, but as she went to close the door, something stopped her. Noah started crying again, louder, more desperate. And then the impossible. The boy reached his arms toward the door, toward where Naomi had gone. Julian froze. Noah had never done that. Never reached for anyone. The nanny gaped. Julian stepped into the hall. Naomi stood a few feet away, back to the wall, trembling. "Wait!" Naomi looked up. Julian watched her differently now, with confusion, with something like curiosity. "What did you do to him?" "Nothing, sir. I was just with him. The boys don't react like that. They never react like that." Naomi didn't know what to say. Julian studied her in silence. Then he glanced at the playroom. Noah kept crying, arms outstretched. "Come back," Julian said, voice rough. "Enter." Naomi returned slowly. She knelt by Noah again. The boy stopped crying. Julian watched it all, every second, every breath. And for the first time in 3 years, something in his chest began to stir. What Julian didn't know was that this moment would change everything, because he was about to discover his son's silence wasn't an illness. It was an absence. And Naomi had filled that void with something money could never buy. That night, Julian couldn't sleep. He sat in his office, lights off, staring at framed photos on his desk. Emily smiling on the beach. Emily with hands on her rounded belly. Emily in the hospital, pale but radiant, holding the 3 newborns. 3 years since that last photo. 3 years of doctors, therapies, shattered hope. 3 years watching his sons locked in silence no one could break, until today. Until a woman with no degree, no training, nothing but her presence did what no specialist had. Noah had reached out. He'd reacted. He'd wanted something. Julian couldn't shake the image. The next morning, he called Naomi to his office. She entered hesitantly, hands clasped over her apron. She thought she was fired. "Sit." Naomi perched on the chair's edge, back straight. Julian watched her in silence for seconds. She was young, simple, no trace of arrogance. She lacked the polished professionalism all the experts wore like armor. She was just real. "What did you do to my son yesterday?" Naomi swallowed. "Nothing, sir. I was just present." "Present?" "Yes, I stayed with him. No rush, no forcing. Let him feel he wasn't alone." Julian frowned. "The doctors tried everything. Occupational therapy, sensory, behavioral. Nothing works." "Maybe," Naomi said softly, "they don't need therapy. Maybe they just need connection." "Connection?" "Yes. Being seen, feeling safe, knowing someone's there without expecting anything." Julian stared as if she spoke another language. And how do you know that? Naomi looked down. She hesitated, but something in Julian's gaze, genuine curiosity, not contempt, made her speak. My grandmother. She cared for people. The elderly, sick kids, folks who'd lost hope. No formal education, but she knew how to touch, how to sing, how to move slow and rhythmic, like her body was music. And people got better. I can't explain it, but it worked. Magic? Julian asked, eyebrow raised. No. Naomi met his eyes. Love, attention, true presence. That's what healed. Julian leaned back, closing his eyes. The weight of 3 years' failure crushed his chest. I don't know if I believe in that. You don't have to, Naomi said. Just let me try. Silence. Julian opened his eyes. What do you need? Time with them every day, an hour uninterrupted. No one telling me what or how. And music. I need music. Music. Yes, and movement, gentle touch, patience. Julian thought of all the exorbitant therapies, the credentialed pros who delivered nothing. Then he thought of Noah's arms reaching for this woman. Okay, 2 weeks. If I see progress, you continue. If not, then I go, Naomi said firmly, no complaint. Julian nodded. And so began something no one in that house expected. Naomi transformed the playroom. She cleared noisy toys, softened the light with shades, added floor cushions. She brought a small Bluetooth speaker and loaded instrumental tracks, nothing jarring. Just gentle, repetitive, rhythmic melodies. Mrs. Hargrove watched from the door, arms crossed, face twisted in disapproval. This is ridiculous. Naomi didn't reply. She just smiled. The first session was slow. The 3 boys sat in their usual spots, staring at nothing. Naomi sat on the floor before them. She didn't touch, didn't talk much. She played the music and began swaying gently to the rhythm. At first, nothing. But after 10 minutes, Theo tilted his head a millimeter. Naomi smiled. She kept swaying. After 20, Lucas blinked repeatedly, like waking. Naomi hummed along. She held her hands palms up, not pushing. Noah, the one who'd cried for her, extended a finger. It brushed her hand. A shiver coursed through her. Hello, my love, she murmured. I see you. I see you. The sessions went on. Every day at the same time with the same patience. Naomi sang, swayed, gently touched their hands, stroked their hair, spoke softly without expecting replies. And bit by bit, something shifted. On day 3, Noah smiled. A tiny, barely there curve. Naomi cried with joy. On day 5, Lucas crawled across the floor. Not walking, but moving, using his arms to reach her. On day 7, Theo stood with support, just seconds. But he held. Julian watched from the door daily, silent, just observing. He saw how Naomi moved with his sons, touched them tenderly, waited, celebrated each tiny step like a grand victory. And each time something in him cracked, because he realized something awful. He'd never done that. Never sat with them without hurry. Never touched without desperation. Never seen them as they were, only as what they couldn't be. He'd been so busy chasing fixes, he'd forgotten to be present. One afternoon after a session, Naomi stepped out and found Julian in the hall. They're improving, he said, voice rough. How do you do it? Naomi met his eyes. Nothing special. I just love them as they are. No waiting for them to be different. Julian felt his throat tighten. I don't know if I can do that. You can, Naomi said gently. Just try. That night, for the first time in 3 years, Julian entered his son's room after bedtime. He sat on the floor between their small beds. He said nothing, just stayed. And slowly he began to hum Naomi's melody, clumsy, off-key but real. Noah turned his head. Theo opened his eyes. Lucas reached out a hand. Julian took it and cried. He cried like he hadn't since Emily died. For lost time, for the distance, for the fear, but also relief. Because finally, after so much silence, he'd found the way back to his sons. But not everyone in the house was happy with the change. Mrs. Hargrove saw her control slipping, and when powerful people lose grip, they can turn dangerous, very dangerous. The Dawson family's annual charity gala was Chicago's premier social event. Entrepreneurs, politicians, celebrities, philanthropists all arrived at the estate in their finest, sipping French champagne and writing checks with plenty of zeros. Julian hosted it yearly in Emily's memory. Funds went to pediatric medical research. It was his way of honoring the woman he'd loved, and of keeping up appearances because high society didn't forgive weakness, and 3 sons who neither spoke nor walked was weakness in many eyes. The estate gleamed that night. Golden lights in the gardens, tables adorned with imported white flowers, a string quartet on the terrace, servers with silver trays, everything flawless. Naomi worked all day prepping. Mrs. Hargrove assigned her the toughest tasks, scrubbing guest bathrooms hourly, clearing empty glasses, keeping service areas tidy. Naomi didn't complain. She handled it with her usual calm, but she knew something was off. Mrs. Hargrove watched her differently now, with barely veiled hatred like brewing revenge. The last 2 weeks had been unbearable for the housekeeper. Seeing Dawson spend time in the playroom, watching the boys respond to this uneducated girl, her authority eroding daily. She'd been the pillar here for 20 years, handling everything, maintaining order. And now this small-town girl waltzed in and upended it all in days. No, it couldn't stand. The gala kicked off at 8 p.m. Guests arrived in luxury cars. Women in designer gowns, men in bespoke suits, fake laughs, calculated chatter. The elite world in full glory. Julian greeted them with his best corporate smile, handshakes, thanks for donations. But his mind wandered upstairs, where the boys were with their nannies. He'd wanted Naomi with them, but Mrs. Hargrove insisted she was needed downstairs for guests. Around 10, as the party peaked, Mrs. Hargrove approached the small stage where the quartet paused. She took the mic. Ladies and gentlemen, pardon the interruption. I just want to thank the staff who made this evening possible. Polite applause. And especially, she continued, smile not reaching her eyes, I'd like to recognize our newest employee. Naomi, where are you? Come here, dear. Naomi was in the kitchen stacking plates. Her stomach dropped. A server nudged her. They're calling you. She emerged slowly, wiping hands on her apron. Every eye turned. Hundreds of curious, mocking, disdainful stares. Mrs. Hargrove beckoned her on stage. Naomi crossed the crowd, feeling the gazes rake her. Simple clothes, stained apron, unkempt ponytail. She didn't belong, and everyone knew. Naomi's been a huge help these past weeks, Mrs. Hargrove said, voice sweet as poison. Cleaning, laundering, handling the humblest tasks. Admirable, isn't it? How some people are willing to do the work others won't. Scattered laughs, murmurs. Naomi's cheeks burned. Actually, the housekeeper went on, Naomi has some very interesting ideas about child rearing. She says no need for doctors or pricey therapies, just love. Isn't that charming? More laughs now, open and cruel. A woman in a red gown called out, how romantic! Surely that cures autism too, right? Laughter erupted. Naomi clenched her fists. She wanted to vanish, to run, but she stood frozen. Julian was across the room. He saw it all, the humiliation, the cruelty. Rage boiled in him, unseen in years. But before he could move, a sound from the stairs. Everyone turned. 3 little boys descended slowly, wobbling, gripping the banister. Noah, Theo, Lucas, walking. The whole room fell silent. The boys didn't look at their father or the crowd. They looked at Naomi. They walked toward her, step by clumsy step, unsteady but moving. The quartet stopped. Glasses ceased clinking. The world halted. Naomi stepped off the stage, knelt, opened her arms. The 3 boys reached her. They clung to her neck all at once. Noah murmured something, barely audible, but he said it. Mama! Naomi felt the world crumble. She cried. She hugged them so tight she thought she'd break them. I see you, she whispered through tears. I see you, my loves. I see you. Julian crossed the room. He dropped to his knees beside them. He held his sons. He held Naomi. And for the first time in 3 years, his family was whole. The crowd didn't know what to do. Some cried, others applauded. Some just stared, stunned, unable to believe. Mrs. Hargrove went pale, motionless, defeated. Julian stood. He fixed the housekeeper with steel eyes. You're fired. Pack your things and leave tonight. Mrs. Hargrove opened her mouth to protest, but no sound came. Julian turned to the guests. This woman, he said, pointing to Naomi, accomplished in 2 weeks what years of medicine couldn't. Not with degrees, not with money, with something I'd forgotten. True love, patience, presence, his voice cracked. She gave life back to my sons. And to me, applause thundered, genuine. Naomi stayed kneeling, boys clinging, tears blurring her vision. But it didn't matter. Surrounded by these 3 who loved her, she knew it had all been worth it. every slight, every humiliation, every ache, because love always wins. Always. But what no one knew yet was that this night wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Because what Julian was about to ask Naomi would change their lives forever. Guests trickled out. Lights dimmed, music faded. The estate returned to quiet, but a different quiet. No longer heavy with sorrow, but warm with peace. The boys slept in their room, exhausted but content. For the first time, they drifted off smiling. Naomi was in the kitchen, stacking last plates. Her eyes still red from crying. She trembled inside. She didn't know what came next. If this was real or if she'd wake tomorrow to find it a dream. Julian entered. Jacket off, tie loose, hair tousled. He looked human for the first time. Naomi turned, wiping hands nervously. Mr. Dawson? No, Julian shook his head. Just Julian, please. Silence stretched seconds. The weight of it all hung tangible between them. Julian leaned on the counter, eyes down. I was dead for 3 years, he said roughly. After Emily died, something in me went out. I kept working, functioning. But inside, empty. Naomi listened, silent, not interrupting. When the boys were born and I saw they weren't improving, I thought it was punishment for not being there. For not saving Emily, for not being enough. His voice broke. I spent fortunes, chased the best. Nothing worked. Until you. The woman with none of what I thought mattered. No degree, no experience, no money. He looked up, gray eyes shining. But you had the one thing that did. Heart. Naomi felt tears well. I saw them. That's all. No. Julian stepped closer. You did more than see. You loved them without expecting anything back, without judging, without quitting. He drew a deep breath. My sons said their first word today. Not to me, to you. Sir, to you because you're their mom in every way that counts. You were there. You cared for them. You loved them when no one else did. Naomi shook her head, crying. I can't take Emily's place. Emily's gone. Julian's voice was firm but kind. And my sons need a mom. They need you. He stepped nearer. Stay, not as staff, as family. Help me raise them. Help me be a better dad. Help me live again. Naomi met his eyes. She saw the vulnerability, the pain, the hope. I don't know if I can do that. You're more than I could ever be, Julian cut in. You're what my sons need. What I need. He extended his hand, large and strong but trembling. Stay, please. Naomi looked at it, and she knew her answer was already in her heart. From the moment she'd first seen those 3 boys, felt that inexplicable bond, she took his hand. I stay. Julian kissed her fiercely like he feared she'd vanish. Naomi closed her eyes. She felt his heartbeat. The warmth. The hope returning. Upstairs in their room, 3 boys slept soundly. Noah dreamed of music, Theo of gardens, Lucas of cuddles, and all 3 dreamed of the same woman, the one who'd seen them when no one else had, the one who'd taught them they weren't broken, the one who'd given them back the world, their mama. Lavender fields stretched endless under July sun, purple bursting bright, air thick with warm earth and summer. Cicadas buzzed in nearby trees. 3 8-year-old boys raced through the blooms, laughing, yelling, chasing with that boundless energy only happy kids have. Noah was fastest, Theo most curious, pausing for every bug, Lucas most affectionate, always waiting so no one lagged. They talked non-stop, silly jokes, wild plans, dreams aloud. Normal kids, beautiful, alive. From a wooden bench under an old tree, Naomi watched, smile lighting her whole face. She was 33 now, hair a bit longer, faint laugh lines around her eyes. A simple gold band gleamed on her ring finger. Julian sat beside her, arm around her shoulders. He wasn't the broken man from 5 years ago. Light returned to his eyes, warmth to his voice, laughter without guilt. They'd married 2 years after that night. A small, intimate ceremony, just those who mattered. Boys as witnesses, beaming with flowers. What are you thinking? Julian asked, kissing her temple. About everything. How we got here. It was you, wasn't it? Naomi shook her head. It was them. They taught us. She nodded at the boys, now building with fallen sticks. They taught us love isn't bought or studied. It's given without strings, without waiting. Julian nodded, squeezing her hand. The foundation hit its goal this month. 500 kids getting free emotional therapy. The Emily and Naomi Foundation had launched a year after the gala. Julian used his fortune for something new. Not just medical treatments, but emotional connection programs, music, art, movement, presence. Naomi ran them hands-on. She trained caregivers, taught her grandmother's wisdom, that ancestral knowledge no school could give. And it worked. Hundreds of families found hope where only silence had been. Noah ran up with a huge lavender sprig. "Mama, look, the biggest!" Naomi took it, inhaled, kissed his sweaty forehead. "Perfect like you." Theo and Lucas barreled after, tackling Julian off the bench. Laughter, joyful shrieks. Naomi watched them. Her family, her everything. 5 years ago, she was invisible, futureless, hopeless, scrubbing floors in a mansion where no one saw her. Now she was mom wife, founder of a life-changing organization. But more than that, she was happy. She rose, walked to the field's heart, closed her eyes, felt sun on her face, wind in her hair, her son's distant calls, and she knew with absolute certainty her grandmother was right. Where money can't reach, love finds a way, always. And that way changes the world. This story reminds us the most precious things in life have no price. If it moved you, if it renewed your faith in human goodness, share this video. Someone else needs to hear true love can do the impossible. Subscribe for more tales that inspire, heal, and restore hope. See you in the next one.